So let's take a look at how to make a wise purchasing decision when it comes to purchasing a printer for your home computer. It's a common question. I get it all the time with the office because there's so much deceptive marketing out there, and so many, you just don't know what is good, and how do you know what's going to be a wise purchase decision. So of course the first thing that you tend to look at is the brand name and who manufactures the printer. Typically speaking, and I don't want to be biased or anything, but I have had very bad experiences with Canon. I know that they do manufacture a half-decent printer, but as far as their support goes, I just remember how horrible the support was. If they've changed that, that's great, let me know. I personally tend to recommend, I like Hewlett-Packard printers, mainly because I think, one, obviously they've got the name, but they've got a lot of great support, and they've got pretty good cartridges, and that's something that we're going to be looking at in a minute, but the cartridge really has a lot to do with the quality of the printer. Another good one, especially if you're looking at laser printers, is Brother, and there's obviously tons of other ones, but I don't want to get into what's best and talk about some of the less, like there's Epson and stuff. And Epson, I've had good experiences and bad experiences. I can't really say either way. And there's low-end HPs, and like just looking at HP as an example, you can buy a really lousy printer from any brand. It doesn't matter because they all manufacture really dirt cheap ones, and then they all manufacture kind of the entry-level, pretty good printers, and then the high-end business stuff. So you really have to be wise about not just the brand, because brand doesn't say everything because of the fact that they're all manufacturing stuff, because they make a lot of money on the cartridges. And if they can sell you a printer just to sell you cartridges, that's what they're going to do. Looking, okay, brand, okay, that's fine, but what do you actually need the printer for? How many prints are you going to be going through a month? Do you need color? That's a big question. You may not realize. In my situation, it would be cool to have color, but to be honest with you, and you'll understand a little bit more in just a moment, but I don't need color. And because of that, that made me decide to buy a cheap laser printer, just a black laser printer. So all my prints come out in black, but my toner never, it just runs and runs. I've got the same toner cartridge in there as I did when I bought it about 1.5 years ago, and that's awesome. And it doesn't dry up like ink. So if you're going to be printing less than, 10 or 15, 20 pages a month, you might consider, do I really need color? Because color printers, if we're looking at the entry-level, inkjet stuff, just the cheaper line, not laser printers, you're going to be running into, if you're not printing enough, it's going to dry out, and the ink is a liquid, and it keeps basically things lubricated, it keeps your heads working properly, and if you're not printing, there's no liquid going through those heads, so it will eventually get kind of crusty, and then you start getting streaks on your printing and things like that. So then we have to look at what kind of printer heads are in your printer. So essentially there's two main types of cartridges. So this cartridge right here, you can see on the bottom left-hand side, just above the ticker, there's no head there. And what I mean by that is that the ink is basically going to be coming into contact with a mechanism in the printer, and that mechanism is then going to flow the ink out into the head. So the head is actually built into the printer. On the other hand, there's another type of cartridge, and this is kind of, and I'm going to show you an HP cartridge. And you can see that the electronics and down it's kind of covered by my ticker there, but that is actually the head of that cartridge. So basically what that means to you when you're purchasing your printer, if it has the head built into the printer, that means when your head dies, when your head needs replacement, you either have to have the printer professionally serviced with a new head replaced or repaired, or you have to throw out the printer and buy a new one. So those kinds of printers tend to be a lot more disposable. With the cartridges, like I showed you there with the HP cartridge that has the built-in head, you can get, you get these stores that will refill your cartridges for you. If they're a professional store, you could probably get up to 8 fills on one of those cartridges, and that cuts your costs exponentially. And because it's got a built-in head, once that head is dried up and it can no longer be used, you just throw away that cartridge, or recycle that cartridge rather, and buy a new cartridge. As you're buying that new cartridge, you're also getting a new head for your printer. So that's kind of ideal that way, because you're going to get a lot more life out of that printer. It's going to be a lot less disposable. So you want to consider what kind of cartridge is going to be going into that printer. And then on top of that, how many cartridges are going into the printer. And it sounds like kind of a silly question, but you see a lot of these like $40 or $70 printers, and they look really appealing because they're really cheap. And you think, oh well, it's the same brand, it's the or whatever. But a lot of times what they have is a single color cartridge. The reason for that is that it saves obviously on manufacturing costs and things like that, but it forces you to be buying a color cartridge all the time, because anytime you print black and white prints, you think that you're saving ink, but it's actually combining all three colors to generate that black tone. So where with a printer with two cartridges, like a color cartridge and a black cartridge, or you might have yellow, cyan, and magenta and black, you may have 4 cartridges. So those kind of printers, you know, you can, if the black is out, you take the black out, you refill it or replace it, and then put it back in, but it doesn't affect your color, and vice versa. With the printers that have only one printer cartridge, you're going to run into running out of ink a lot, even if you're only printing in black and white. So that gets very costly. So don't be misled into thinking that a $40 or $70 printer is actually cheap, because you're likely going to have to replace those cartridges a lot sooner than you would if they had more cartridges in there. There's also the all-in-one printers, things like that, if you want to be able to fax or scan. And there's basically 2 contenders, well, 3 really, in that market, and those are essentially, you've got the top-fed printer cartridge printers, all-in-one printers, kind of like this one, where you can see that the paper is actually being fed in through the top. And so the advantages to this, obviously, is that you can get multiple pages to be scanned in at the same time, and it will just keep feeding them through. But you can't scan anything like a book. Like if you want to scan something that's a hard item, it's not like a flatbed where you can put it in. It's actually going to be just feeding papers through. So it's a little inconvenient. So consider what are you going to be scanning and what are you going to be faxing. So then the other option, of course, is to go with something more like the HP 5610 that's going to give you a flatbed scanner as well. And you can obtain these as well with a feeding mechanism. You can see on the top of that image that it will actually pull pages through. So those are kind of the 3 options. You've got the top feed, you've got the standard flatbed style all-in-one, and those are great for just scanning, you know, basically anything. And then there's the ones that will actually feed in to the flatbed. So then you get the best of both worlds. And then you've got to consider, I know there's a lot of considerations. See this? This will be a book at one point. So you got to think about, you know, if you use a digital camera, do you want to be able to just put your camera card directly into the printer and print photo prints? So consider those kinds of things. And if you have any questions further to what I've already explained about making wise purchasing decisions with regards to a residential printer, just feel free to go over to www.tv.robbief.com and visit episode number 5 in the forum. Just click on forum and go in there and just ask your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Those cartridges, I showed you the cartridge up on the screen there. What manufacturers are doing these days, and every manufacturer is guilty of it. You look at that cartridge, and that's a full cartridge. And this one, just in this particular image, we were able to see kind of through it transparently, but these days they're making them, you know, opaque. They come in a brand new printer about 15% filled with ink. So you can imagine if that's a, you know, it could be a big cartridge. If it's only coming with this much ink, you're going to have to replace or refill that very soon. And that's just the way it is. That's the way that, so you have to keep that in mind as well. You'd almost be good just to take it right into a refill store and get them to fill it up right on the spot. And Chosen was just mentioning about duplex printers. If you ever see the word duplex, that means that it's going to take your paper and automatically flip it and print on the other side. Cool feature, but probably not what we're looking for home. If you run a home office, you might be interested in that if you do a lot of printing, but not too likely. Yeah, Chosen makes another good point about when you're buying your printer, check the price of the cartridges. Find out how much those are going to cost you when you when you replace them. Many, many great points coming through MSN, tv@robbief.com. Howie from Scotland is just mentioning as well that we can get off-brand printer cartridges. And that kind of goes along with what I was saying about going to the stores. You know, you find little kiosks in the malls and things like that where they'll actually refill your cartridge. You can actually, a lot of those places and even retail stores, you can find off-brand, co-rec, like unbranded cartridges. So they're just like the, you know, like an HP cartridge. And it, you know, usually they'll have just as good of ink if you buy them from a reputable source. But they may be a recycled cartridge, they may be manufactured by another company, they may be, you know, cartridges that were discarded by the manufacturer and then refilled by another company and then they're being resold. So those are a great way to shop as well, because you can save, you know, if you're going to pay $60 for a new HP cartridge and you can buy a co-rec or an unbranded cartridge that works in your printer for say $20, then, you know, you can't go wrong with that. So, and a lot of them come with guarantees as well. So.